Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, a missing mother and wife.
I do not feel like Ed is acting like a husband that is missing his wife.
A desperate daughter.
Is it your fear that your mother is dead?
Yeah.
Accuses her stepfather.
I think he killed her. Or his daughter, Lauren.
Absolutely not. I just had a stroke.
You're paralyzed, but 5 days after your wife has gone missing, you're typing up hooray for the Buckeyes.
I can text very well, but I can't even hold a pen.
She leaves the house without a coat, no wallet, no phone. Do you think it odd that she's totally off the grid?
No.
For 9 months, you don't find that odd?
I think she does not want to be found.
At that moment, you realize she's gone. Why was your first thought, we are going to be blamed? Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
I try to be an emotional compass and point you in the right direction.
5, 4.
I am not giving up on you. Well, today we are talking about a mother that has gone missing. It's a mystery that's tearing one family apart. Now, accusations are flying and tensions are mounting because everyone involved in this tragedy is desperate to know the truth about what happened to this beloved wife and mother. Now, Carrie Zaplatel vanished 8.5 months ago from the home she shared with her husband of 7 years, Ed. Now, Carrie's daughter, Shelby, is desperate to find her mother and says she's absolutely sure that her mother was a victim of foul play and foul play at the hands of her stepfather and possibly his daughter, Lauren. Ed says Shelby's accusations are absolutely ludicrous. Why? Because he says he was bedridden and paralyzed at the time of her disappearance. If so, he says, how could he have been able to move, let alone kill and hide a body? Here's how the story was first reported back in December.
A daughter is desperate to find her mother, who's been missing for 9 days.
Zaplatel's husband told police his wife, Carrie, walked out of the house on a very cold day in December. That was the last time her family saw her.
I don't think that my mom just walked away. It's not my mom.
The Memphis family is pleading for your help to find their mother, who vanished last winter. Police considered a missing persons case, but Janice Broach found key parts of this case are just not adding up.
Shelby Fuller is a daughter in anguish. She says her mother has $2,000 in a bank account that has not been touched. Zaplatel's husband did file a missing persons report. He told police she was depressed but didn't see her leave the house that day.
She's never been diagnosed with depression. That's going by her husband, and that's not true. I'm crying out for help.
So is Carrie's disappearance the result of an accident? Was Carrie murdered in cold blood like Shelby believes? Or is this just a case of a mom that just doesn't want to be found? I mean, let's face it, adults have the right to go missing. If they want to just get lost, they have the right to get lost. Well, today, we're going to try and sort through the facts, the emotion. We're going to see if we can get some answers, because Shelby says she is at her breaking point.
I truly believe that my mother's husband, Ed, had something to do with my mother's disappearance.
A daughter is desperate to find her mother, who's been missing for 9 days.
The relationship between my mom and Ed was abusive, mentally and physically. They fought all the time.
Shelby can't see the facts for the way they stand. When Carrie disappeared, I just had a stroke and I was physically incapable of getting out of bed.
Even though Ed suffered a stroke 6 weeks before my mother's disappearance, he wasn't as debilitated as he made himself out to be. I feel like Ed was physically capable of doing something.
It's totally absurd.
I do not feel like Ed is acting like a husband that is missing his wife. He's been out of town several times in different states. not helping on searches or posting flyers or even sharing it on social media. He just doesn't do anything. The day before the search party, Ed checked himself into the hospital.
I would have loved to have participated in a search, so I went back to the hospital to get more treatment.
I truly feel like he was trying to avoid the situation. I've spent countless hours searching for my mom. I've posted hundreds of flyers. They even got the local news stations to cover my mom's story. Ed didn't get motivated until he found out that we'd contacted the Dr. Phil show. Now I'm getting all kinds of leads from Ed, but it's all been a dead end. Ed really is just leading me on just to cover himself.
She's blinded by her dislike of me. I'm absolutely fed up with all this finger pointing, and I want it to stop.
Okay, Shelby, I'm glad to meet you, but sorry for the circumstance. Let me just ask you straight up. Is it your fear that your mother is dead?
Yeah.
You think her body's laying somewhere? I hope and pray that's not true.
Yes, you do.
But it's your fear that it is. And your fear is that this wasn't some accident. You think she's been murdered.
Yes, sir.
And who do you think killed her?
I think Ed has involvement in my mom's disappearance.
Well, involvement is a non-responsive word. What do you mean involved? You think he killed her?
I think he killed her.
Is that what you mean by involvement?
Yes.
You think that he affirmatively took your mother's life?
Yes, sir.
He did something, hit her, choked her, shot her, stabbed, something.
Yes, sir.
To end her life.
Yes, sir. Or his daughter, Lauren.
Why would one or both of them do that? Why would they?
Maybe Ed and my mom were arguing, and maybe he didn't mean to, and it just happened, and now he's hiding it. Lauren has motive because my mom had one of her children, or had involvement in one of her children being taken away by CPS.
But I mean, that's a big leap. Why have you gone to the conclusion that they would kill her?
I have a gut feeling whenever we walked into the house, when me and the police did a walkthrough of the house, there was tire tracks in the yard from the beginning of the yard up into the door.
Has your mother gone missing before?
No, sir.
She's never. Now, the last time that you know of that your mother was seen was December 2nd.
Yes, sir.
So it's been over 9 months.
Yes, sir.
Since your mother was seen.
Yes, sir.
Were her things missing too? Did she like pack up things, and are those gone too?
No, sir. My mom left her vehicle, car keys, identification, debit cards. She didn't even take a coat.
Cell phone?
No cell phone.
She had a credit card, debit card with money on it, and left it.
Yes.
Car, keys,
yes,
everything's still there. Clothes still there.
Clothes still there.
What was the temperature that
34 degrees that night.
And this is in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
And my research says the wind was out of the north at 18 miles an hour.
Yes, sir.
That night, so the chill factor would have been in the low 20s at least. So she has no coat, no car, no keys, no money, no nothing. And has any activity shown up since then? Any bank activity?
No, sir.
Any?
Nothing.
So she's gone off the grid.
Totally off the grid.
So she just apparently walks out a door in sub-freezing temperatures and never to be heard from again.
Right.
So how did you learn about this? Did Ed call?
No. My mom went missing on a Tuesday. I didn't find out till Thursday night.
And how'd you find out?
I was at my uncle's house whenever he received the call.
From?
Ed.
So it was 2 days before Ed called anybody to tell them?
Right.
Didn't tell the police or anybody?
He notified the police 24 hours after my mom's disappearance.
Have you told him that you suspect he's done this?
Oh, he knows.
How could he do this if he was paralyzed?
I don't believe he was as helpless as he's making himself out to be.
But he had been in a hospital. He had had some event that caused paralysis. He'd been in a hospital. He'd been in rehab. You have no doubt that he had a legitimate physical event, right?
That he had a stroke. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Whenever he was released from the hospital, he was not paralyzed. He posted on Facebook that he was not paralyzed.
Coming up, the bombshell no one saw coming.
He actually entered into a suicide pact.
Under what circumstances? What would be the trigger?
Friday on an all-new Dr. Phil.
My mom kicked me out when I was 15 years old. I did not throw her out.
Ungrateful daughter?
I was at her knees begging, I'm sorry. My daughter was recoiling in the chair.
Or is mom delusional?
Did you threaten that therapist?
No, sir.
You throw a check on the floor and say, have a nice life. This therapist's job is to bring mother and daughter together.
Yes, sir. And as I
And
said,
she says, I quit.
That's Friday.
My mother went missing on a Tuesday. Ed filed a police report on a Wednesday and did not tell me or any family members until Thursday. I immediately started asking Ed questions, and he couldn't give me any answers. And then he started getting frustrated with me because of my questions. That was making me suspicious and irritated. I feel like he's hiding something.
Well, Shelby is convinced her mother's husband, Ed, had something to do with her mother vanishing into thin air. I asked her what that something was. She said, I think he killed her, or his daughter that had an axe to grind over some CPS issues, child custody issues. Ed, on the other hand, says Shelby has a vendetta against him. He says she has no idea that her mother had become completely out of control in the weeks before her disappearance. Take a look.
Shelby needs to realize that Carrie's got a lot of issues. Carrie's an alcoholic and a binge drinker. When Carrie's been drinking, she can get really crazy. One night, Carrie and I started arguing, and she hit me in the head pretty hard. I saw stars. It shocked me because I just had a stroke. In addition to abusing alcohol, she's been known to abuse prescription drugs and some other things also.
I've never witnessed my mom doing drugs.
After Carrie disappeared, several of Carrie's former co-workers have spotted her in various parts of town. Two of her co-workers went to a park where she had been seen. I was told she was totally incoherent at the time.
It's trying to paint a picture that my mom is a crackhead or a prostitute. That idea is absolutely absurd. Right now, there's over $2,000 in my mom's bank account. If she were in the streets strung out on drugs, why hadn't she touched her money?
Carrie suffers from severe depression. After my stroke, I could see that Carrie was overwhelmed. She was growing more distant. She told me that she had guzzled an entire bottle of rubbing alcohol trying to commit suicide, and she was disappointed that it didn't end her life.
That is not true. My mom was not suicidal.
It's very difficult for Shelby to accept that her mother's gone. She's looking for someone to blame. This is all on Carrie.
Ed, thank you for
being
here and talking about this. And I know that your wife's missing, and I'm very sorry for that. Sorry for your circumstances. I am for Shelby's. This is terrible.
Yes, it is. It totally devastated me. I ended up having to go on antidepressants, and I was just crying every day, all day, for quite a while.
I just want to try and use this platform, the Dr. Phil platform, to bring some attention to this and some bright lights to this. And all I ask of you, and all I ask of you, is just a commitment to work with me to help figure out what happened.
I want to emphasize the fact that I'm totally convinced that she's still alive, and she's been seen as recently as a week ago. I know I've talked to 6 different people who have seen her and talked to her. I've searched a lot, I mean, in many different places, but after she had been seen by a friend of mine on the street in that area, I went from store to store showing her ID, and she was positively ID'd by a clerk at this drugstore. She'd been seen in there buying beer.
Let me get to that in a minute. Let me turn the clock back a little bit to December 2nd. What happened that night?
That night, she had come in and got completely dressed, and I was asking her, like, what's going on, you know, what, but she didn't really talk to me at all. And the next thing I knew, my daughter said that she was missing, and I had Carrie's son, Brad, awakened, and I asked him to start searching, and he searched everywhere.
What happened between the two of you that night?
It was actually the previous night that she was just talking, like telling me how depressed she was, and we actually entered into a suicide pact. She said she couldn't live without me, and I was like, I can't live without you. She acted like I really wasn't there. She acted like I was almost already dead. It was really weird, because she didn't really seem to acknowledge the fact that I was alive and well, and I told her that I'm going to get better. I'm going to recover from this, and everything's going to be okay.
So on December 1st, you entered into a suicide pact.
Yes.
And tell me about the suicide pact, the agreement.
She was going to kill herself, and I would kill myself also.
Okay, if you were saying you were going to get better, why would you enter into a suicide pact?
Because I was convinced that I wouldn't be able to live without her.
And where did this agreement take place?
In my hospital bed at the house.
So you have a hospital bed at your house?
Yeah.
And did she get into bed with you?
Yeah, she got into bed with me, and you know, we snuggled and cried, and you know, I tried to comfort her. Yeah, we were embracing.
And so you agreed to kill yourselves under what circumstances? What would be the trigger for you killing yourselves?
That wasn't really discussed. It was just discussed in very general terms. There was no details specified, you know, how we were going to do it or anything like that. But
That doesn't sound like a suicide pact.
Well, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to get into semantic argument here, but that's what that was. I mean, in my opinion, it was a suicide pact.
And you've never mentioned that to anybody before now?
No, I guess not.
How was she throughout the day?
She was acting really disoriented. There was just something missing.
And later, for someone in electronic age to go totally off the grid for 9 months strikes me as really odd.
On the new season of Dr. Phil.
My dad sending money to a woman in Mexico that he had an affair with. She had to have a lung transplant.
You paid for the lung. So she just showed up to a clinic with a lung in an igloo cooler and said, I'm here to get a transplant.
That's basically what happened.
Do you think maybe she's lied to you?
I just want to know the truth. Is my brother-in-law a monster?
An uncle too affectionate with his 16-year-old niece.
You're sending her a letter that says,
I love you with all my heart.
You put whipped cream on your neck, and Grace says you ask her to lick it off.
I don't remember doing that.
The creep meter is pegging over here.
Plus,
you were the facialist to the stars.
Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox.
accused of hiring a hitman to kill her rival.
Did you solicit someone to kill this man?
It was one of those, oh, I could kill this person. I should find someone to take him out.
You typed out a text message. I have found someone that can do this deed for me.
This fall on Dr. Phil.
Ever since my mother's disappearance, Ed's stories of what happened that night have constantly changed. Ed says that he saw my mother before she left the house, and then he says that he didn't see my mother. He said that she was asleep on the couch wearing a pink bathrobe, but then later on said that she was wearing a black sweater and dark blue jeans. Because his stories keep changing, it makes me even more suspicious.
You say she had rigged the couch kind of like to make it look like someone was under the covers when they weren't?
That's a new story, too.
According to my daughter, yes, that's the way my daughter discovered.
And when did you actually discover that she was missing, that she wasn't under that blanket?
Well, I didn't discover it. My daughter did.
When was it discovered that she was gone?
It was about 8 o'clock on the night of the 2nd.
Okay, so she was in your hospital bed making a suicide pact on the 1st.
Right.
And then the next morning, you don't know whether she was there or not. Did you see her the next morning?
Yeah.
Okay, you saw her the next morning.
Yes,
You see her throughout the day?
Yes.
And how was she throughout the day?
She was acting really disoriented. It was difficult for me to have any kind of conversation with her.
Disoriented in that she didn't know who she was, where she was, what she was doing, or just kind of out of it, or
all the above.
Walking around, was she disoriented as to person, place, and time?
No, not really. Not that I could tell.
Okay. She knew who she was.
Yeah.
She knew where she was.
Yeah.
She hadn't had like a psychotic break.
Right, but it's really hard to describe, but...
Well, you're doing a good job. So.
She didn't act like I was who I was. I'll put it that way. It seemed like she wasn't really aware or ready to accept the fact that I was back home. You know, this is it. We're together now. And I don't know how to describe that any better, but there was just something missing.
Was she bothered by your paralysis? Was this an issue?
Oh, absolutely. And she really didn't think I was going to get better. As a matter of fact, she stopped seeing me. I was in the hospital for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I went from there to a rehabilitation center, and I was there for another 2 weeks.
And your position is you'd been in the hospital, then in rehabilitation, now you were home in a hospital bed. Despite her suspicions, you're saying you couldn't have harmed her if you wanted to?
No, absolutely not. In fact, the only reason I was discharged when I was is because I didn't have any insurance. And they had gotten as far as they could with charity work with me. They told me before I left that I was being discharged because I was there the maximum length of time. But at any time I could call 911 and get readmitted.
But you still had issues with paralysis and other symptoms from the original event of the stroke. You were still
I was a vegetable. I couldn't get out. I couldn't get out of bed. The only way I got out of bed at all was her brother Bradley would lift me up, and I'd put on a harness, and he would put me in this lift, and I'd be suspended from the harness, and then he could roll me around the house.
All right, and then you had originally told the police that she leaves the house about 8:30 that night, as far as you know, without a coat, no wallet, no keys, no phone, no vehicle. Poof, she's gone. Disappears, you have no idea where.
Right. I want to emphasize that she had her debit card with her, and she also had ID.
I have her debit card.
Pardon?
I have her debit card.
The one that I was looking for?
The one that was at your house whenever the police did the search.
But there was no big blow-up or anything. She was just gone.
I was told that missing persons case, they've got to be gone for 48 hours before it can be reported, or before they'll take it, so they'll start looking for her.
Did she tell you she was leaving?
No. However,
did you tell the police she told you she was leaving?
Not so much I'm leaving, but I can't take this anymore. She told me over and over, this is too much for me.
All right, well, we're going to take a break here. Next, we're going to meet Ed's daughter, who says she was in the house the night Carrie went missing. We'll hear her firsthand account of what was happening days and hours before Carrie vanished. We'll be right back.
Leading up to the night that Carrie disappeared, she would drink anything she could get her hands on. She wasn't in the right state of mind and was walking around the house completely nude.
I don't feel like my mom was depressed, nor has she ever been diagnosed with depression.
At one point, Carrie completely lost it. I had to take her to a hospital. She didn't really know who I was. When the doctor asked her who the president was, she said Ronald Reagan.
My mom was in liver failure. She wasn't losing her mind. The doctor said if we had not brought her in, she would have died within the next 24 hours. Ed was going to let her die.
Shelby and her stepfather, Ed, say Carrie Zaplatel vanished and went off the grid nearly 9 months ago. Now, Ed describes his wife, Carrie, as a drunk who suffered a mental breakdown and tried to commit suicide in the weeks before she disappeared. Well, Ed's daughter, Lauren, was living with Ed and Carrie back in December when Carrie got dressed, walked out the door without car keys, phone, wallet, or coat, in the 34-degree weather with a howling north wind.
Leading up to the night that Carrie disappeared, she was sleeping a lot. She wasn't getting up and moving around. She would drink anything she could get her hands on. She wasn't in the right state of mind and was walking around the house completely nude. It was really strange behavior because nobody had seen her acting this way. The night that Carrie went missing, I was in my bedroom, door shut. My dad was in his room watching TV. I think it was around 8:30 at night. My dad called me and he goes, see if you can get the charger from Carrie. So I went into the den, it looked like she was there, and it was just a blanket.
Now, Ed's sister, Lori, says she visited Ed in rehab just 8 days before Carrie went missing. She says Carrie told her she was planning on leaving because caring for Ed in his debilitated condition was just too much to handle.
After the stroke, Ed was in the hospital for approximately 6 weeks. Carrie was by his side constantly. However, once he went to rehab, we could not reach Carrie. So I called the rehab facility. Not only had she not visited, he had never been signed into the facility by any family member. I immediately booked a flight to Memphis. When I walked in the door and saw my brother, he could not sit up, he could not stand up, he could not feed himself, but his first question to me was, "Where's Carrie?" The very next day, I made sure that Carrie came with me. Over the next couple of days, I started getting texts from Carrie saying that she wanted out, she couldn't take it anymore, she was going to leave. I was so worried about my brother being in her care, but Ed was adamant about going home. After Ed was released from rehab, I received a call from Ed. Carrie had hit him in the head several times. My worst nightmares had come true.
Really curious because I think what Lori is describing, what Lauren is describing, what Ed is describing, to me from a professional standpoint, sounds like someone that was in an acute state of mental illness, that they were in a breakdown, and if you're suffering from mental illness and you're pouring alcohol on top of that, it really exacerbates your problem-solving ability, skills. It really creates problems there and gets in the way of your coping skills at the same time, which leads to what commonly is referred to as a meltdown or a breakdown, and that's kind of what you guys seem to be describing. And is that a fair characterization of what you were seeing?
Yes, very unusual behavior for my sister-in-law. I had never seen her act in this way.
And were you in contact with her during the same period of time? Were you talking to her on a daily basis, every other day,
I was not talking
weekly?
to her on a daily basis. I was not.
How was she when you last talked to her?
She was fine. She was cooking. She was seeing who all was coming over for Thanksgiving.
Did your mother have problems with alcohol or
She
drugs?
did, with alcohol.
And
I've heard
when you say
rumors.
problems, was she a binge drinker? Was she a daily drinker? Would she
would binge.
drink
There
to the
was
point
times
of-
where she would go months without drinking, and then there was times where she would drink for a few days.
Is it possible that the pressure got to her and
I don't believe
she was medicating herself with alcohol and got into a really drunken stupor, got into a binge during this period of time?
I don't believe so.
Why would you?
Why
Why would
I
that
don't?
not be a possibility?
I mean, she could have been drinking, but I don't think that it would have led to her disappearance.
And why
She
would
would have
you
had
rule
to
that
have.
out?
She would have had to have sobered up sometime.
Yeah, so you've not known her to go on a 9-month binge.
She's never, any binge that she's ever went on, she's stayed in contact with everyone.
Help me understand something. You were saying that you were paralyzed. That's not adding up for me, and I need you to help me understand that.
Friday on an all-new Dr. Phil. Is mom delusional?
People say you stole an ambulance.
That is the legend in the fire department.
No, sir. I took my ambulance down to the beach.
So you just borrowed the ambulance.
That's Friday.
Closed captioning provided by...
Safe, non-habit-forming Midnight. Unlike some sleep products, it's drug-free. It can help you fall asleep and stay asleep, so you can wake refreshed. Midnight, the drug-free way to get the sleep you need.
Do you think it odd that she's totally off the grid?
No.
For 9 months, you don't find that odd?
I think she does not want to be found. And the reason for this is that the people who have interacted with her since she was gone, the last time when she was seen by...
All of your friends. Nobody else. No
they're
one's
all,
contacted
they,
the
they were
police.
not my friends. They were colleagues.
You said earlier that they were your friends or colleagues.
Well, I don't know her at all. I don't know anybody here until now, but for someone in an electronic age to go totally off the grid for 9 months strikes me as really odd. But she left behind a debit card with money on it.
That was not left behind. It was she'd taken it with her. And if in fact I had
but there hasn't been a withdrawal. Whether she left it behind or not, and you say she left it behind, you say she didn't, but the money has not been accessed.
Correct.
Not one dime has been taken out of that account in 9 months. If you've got an alcoholic on a binge or somebody doing drugs and they got cash available, trust me, the first thing they do is run through cash. Absolutely. That's the first thing they do. If that woman's out there, if that woman's out there and has access to cash and is not accessing it, there's a reason. Help me understand something, because I'm just a little confused, and you can help me with this, because you were saying that you were paralyzed at the time, that they had to get you up with a harness and all of that type thing.
Yes.
And that's not adding up for me, and I need you to help me. Will you help me understand that? Because you put a post up, and you put this up January 1st, 2015, and you said on October 18th, I suffered a stroke. My right side was paralyzed. I spent 3 weeks at Baptist East. Then you said after a few weeks, I was discharged. I couldn't wait to see my loving wife. My paralysis was gone. So, but I couldn't walk. I required a lot of care. It became apparent to me that Carrie had changed. She had some kind of mental breakdown. Our last night together, which you described just a minute ago, she climbed into my hospital bed with me and we embraced. She kept telling me she was really scared. I realized she had written me off when I entered the rehab facility. I said, don't be scared. I'm going to be all right. That assurance didn't faze her. In hindsight, I realized she was scared for me. She was scared for herself. There's no opportunity for closure.
When I said there that my paralysis was gone, what I meant by that is that I had gotten feeling back on my right side, but I still couldn't really use it.
But I also know that in the discharge notes, it said that gross motor skills were intact and had returned. And I also know that 1 week after her disappearance, you were able to type, because on December 7th, 5 days after her disappearance, you typed, kudos and much respect to my alma mater, Ohio State football team, and their third-string quarterback for their stunning 59-0 defeat of Wisconsin to clinch the Big Ten championship, which, I mean, your mentally ill wife has gone missing in the cold of night. You're paralyzed with shaking, uncontrollable post-stroke hands, but you're typing up hooray for the Buckeyes.
I can text very well, but I can't even hold a pen and write, even now.
Are you talking about that because you don't want me to talk to them about this?
Do you need Dr. Phil's help? Text Phil to 88500 and share your story for a chance to appear on the show. Standard message and data rates may apply.
We have a lot of fun here in the studio audience.
If you're going to be in the Los Angeles area and you would like free tickets, go to drphil.com and click Be in the Audience, or you can call 323-461-PHIL. That's 323-461-7445. Your mentally ill wife has gone missing in the cold of night. You're paralyzed with shaking, uncontrollable post-stroke hands, but you're typing up hooray for the Buckeyes 5 days after. So it's just inconsistent.
I didn't really have difficult on my phone because it wasn't any gross movements. But
so you had fine motor movement?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, enough to for example,
Look, I'm not saying that means you did something ugly to your wife. I'm not saying that.
I understand.
I'm just trying to understand things so I can reason this out.
I'm trying to explain.
I'm just trying to find this woman.
Right.
I can text very well, but I can't even hold a pen and write, even now. I mean, that's just you know, my abilities. If I try to write something, it's totally illegible, but I can find my way around a keyboard.
But it doesn't strike y'all at all odd that in 9 months this woman is totally off the grid.
Odd? It strikes us really odd.
But I just asked them and they said no.
What is difficult is during the time that I was at the rehab and I engaged Carrie, in fact, I insisted that she go see Ed because she hadn't been at the rehab at all. And so on the 21st of November, I picked her up at her home and made her go to rehab. That was a very interesting moment when I walked into the house because the thing she wanted me to do immediately was to take her to the store to get cigarettes because she hadn't had a cigarette in 2 days and she was shaking. So I did that. Not only did I take her, I had to pay for them. And then she got her stuff together, and I took her to rehab.
Are you talking about that because you don't want me to talk to them about this?
No, what I wanted to tell you about, absolutely not.
Closed captioning provided by...
Most of Red Robin's sides are bottomless, which means they don't stop serving them until you wave the white napkin.
Red Robin. Yum.
Ready to get real? Go to drphil.com for advice on relationships, parenting, finances, and more. Plus, weigh in on your favorite episodes, share your stories, and find support in the Dr. Phil community. When you sign up for the community, you will automatically be subscribed to the Dr. Phil Show newsletter. Log on to drphil.com today. We have run out of time today, and there is so much more to get to. We still haven't talked about Ed's daughter, Lauren, who was living in the house the night Carrie vanished. I have a lot of questions for her. You'll find out what Lauren said during her field taping interview that I found very odd and incredibly telling. Here's a preview of tomorrow's show.
Tomorrow on an all-new Dr. Phil, her stepdad's given her leads.
Telling her about sightings of her mother all over town.
That go nowhere.
Feels like I'm just on a wild goose chase.
Dead end, dead end, another dead end.
Ed said that my mom was spotted here.
They have surveillance cameras. If my wife had been missing, I'd be camped out over there till they freeze-framed that woman walking in that door.
It just didn't occur to me to do that.
Maybe now.
Why did you want to take her off stage at the break?
I didn't want to take her off.
There will be answers.
How did you know she was missing?
Well, I mean,
You used the word missing, and we're going to be blamed. I just wondered if you would answer my question.
That's tomorrow.
We'll also hear from Courtney, who is one of the missing woman's closest friends and the one person Carrie turned to after her worst fights with Ed. Tune in tomorrow to find out if we solve the mystery and to see if Ed's daughter, Lauren, handles being in the hot seat and why Shelby claims Ed is sending her on wild goose chases with claims of sightings of her mother. If you have any information that could lead authorities to Carrie Zaplatel, please contact Memphis Police at 901-545-2677. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Memories can kill ya, but I didn't hear ya. I thought that I could fly, but woke up on the asphalt. I swear there was the last time. I've always been naive. Call it